I'm Laura Arvin with Delta Interfaith. We'll go ahead and get started, and hopefully folks will catch on as they come in. We're glad to see you here at the workshop to improve broadband in East Carroll Parish. Dwayne Fountain is going to get us started with a prayer and some, tell us a few things. Dwayne, you want to take us away?
Thank you, Laura. Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Dwayne Fountain, pastor of Lighthouse Christian Fellowship, member of Delta Interfaith and Together Louisiana. We are so glad to have you here on our meeting today. We thank each and every one of you for coming and being a part of this great meeting. Like always, we begin our meetings with prayer, and after prayer, we'll have Miss Linda Milliken as well as Miss Laura Arvin to come to speak with you. Let us pray. Oh, gracious God, we thank you for the opportunity to assemble together in your name. We thank you for all your blessings and for all that you bestowed upon us. We ask, Lord, that you would prosper us in every way. We ask that you will allow your wisdom and your knowledge that you've given to presenters to be transferred unto us. We pray, Lord, that you will continue to cause us to grow in every aspect of our lives. And we pray that we will cause this community to grow in a great and mighty way. We thank you in your great name. Amen.
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 Frank Al Holden.
Now we want to ask each and every person to put your name in the chat and the name of your organizations so that we will be able to know exactly who all here on our meeting today. And if there's any questions, you can also put those in the chat and we'll make sure that we can get to them to answer them as quick as we can. Now on to you, Linda.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and so happy that you're here. Of course, you notice that you don't see me, and that's one of the reasons why we have broadband issues in East Carroll Parish. We are Delta Interfaith, and Delta Interfaith is a faith-based, service-based coalition of church congregations across religious, racial, and socioeconomic lines, and we are here to achieve change to concrete issues for the betterment of the citizens of the Louisiana Delta, specifically East Carroll Parish. We are part of a larger group, and we decide on the issues because the community gets together and we decide which issues are the ones that we need to work with in a particular year. And this year, of course, we're working with roads and drainage, and we're working with broadband. And like I said, broadband is very important because of the fact that we realized that we needed it for this parish. And I'm on my phone, and I'm looking at you on my iPad, and the reason why I have two devices going is because of the broadband. So we are so happy that you're here and that you're interested in this as well. But we are Delta Interfaith. Laura?
Thank you, Linda. That's awesome. And you work hard to be here. That's wonderful. We know the statistics in East Carroll Parish. It's one of the poorest places in USA, but there is hope. And the people in this community are willing to work hard to help people make a better life. So having better access to faster, more affordable internet and providing opportunities to learn how to use the internet, it isn't a luxury, as we know. It's a necessity. But I think I'm preaching to the choir. So I'll let some of the voices of our community speak for themselves. So Broderick, can you share the community testimonials that we have?
Sure. And if I could ask folks to mute their phones or devices, away we go.
I'm tired of Kilobit. I live out in the rural area, and maybe about a fourth of a mile from me, less than a fourth of a mile from me, is a store that the cable runs from Highway 65 past that store and it goes on down. Now I live up from that store, and even though they have it right down the road from me, we can't get it because it does not come our way.
The library is the most important piece in any community, and especially for such a rural area like Providence, East Carroll Parish. We have all resources needed, and true enough, libraries, people first think of books. But for us, it's a little different. Now, we do have some faithful readers here, but for the most part, for our little rural area, people are needing access to computers and the internet. Some people come in to do job searches, they do their resumes. A lot of people come in and do conferences. Some do like they're doing Zoom conferences. Some come and do homework assignments. Some actually come in and be in school, doing school hours. They come and take classes here. What you guys are doing is a great idea, because even with us having the pieces that we have, it still falls apart, because there are times when if the weather goes bad, the Wi-Fi doesn't work very well. And there are times it just decides that it just wants to do its own thing. So during those times, people don't have access to it. So we have to make sure that we're doing what's needed to make sure the community is getting what they're needing. And that's very, very important for the library.
My sister and her husband are relocating from Illinois, and as they're there today looking for housing, that's the question that they're asking first. Is there internet service here?
So Scott and Don agreed in June to help us with this endeavor to get better internet for East Carroll. We're very grateful for all they've done for us so far, and their experience and expertise will put us on a path to a real action plan, something that we can make it happen. So Scott Woods and Don Williams with Broadband USA, you can please lead us in the next phases.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen in a second. But I just wanted to say thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure to work with Delta Interfaith and Together Louisiana and our federal partners as we work together to try and garner solutions for East Carroll Parish, for Lake Providence, and for the region as a whole. So I'm going to share my screen and go through a little bit of who we are and what we do, and really outline how we can help and what we have planned for our upcoming session. So if you could just give me 1 second, I am going to share my screen. And there we are. So here we are today for our broadband planning workshop series. I'm going to introduce you right now to my team. Again, Scott Woods. I manage the technical assistance program. We're joined by Don Williams, who's a senior broadband development specialist with Broadband USA, and Karen Perry, broadband policy analyst with Broadband USA. Don and I primarily work with communities across the country, as well as Karen working with federal partners, USDA and EDA, to really help communities with planning and capacity building for broadband and digital inclusion across the country. Let me give you just a little brief overview of NTIA, who we are and what we do. We advise the executive branch on international and domestic telecommunications policy issues, really around 3 major goals: expanding broadband access and adoption, expanding the use of spectrum by all users, and then ensuring that the internet remains an engine for continued innovation and economic growth. The Broadband USA Technical Assistance Team, we focus on primarily goal number 1, make sure that we're helping communities to expand broadband access, digital inclusion, and adoption. And how do we do this? We really do this through our technical assistance program and our Broadband USA initiative overall. We have three main pillars, right? We serve and we design to educate, assist, and convene, right? We educate, we try to arm stakeholders and community leaders with the right guides and tools to help them make the right decision for their projects, for their communities, right? We can assist by doing things like this, right? Conducting and facilitating and supporting community workshops and events to really talk about and share lessons learned about broadband connectivity and digital inclusion. And then we convene, right? So pre-COVID, we were providing in-person community technical assistance with community stakeholders and partners around the areas of planning, funding, and implementation. And so you'll hear from my team member and colleague, Don Williams, in a second. But we really focus on community outcomes, right? Through our partnerships with other federal agencies, you don't want to see that. With our partners with other federal agencies, I'm sorry about that. You don't want to care about the Steelers today. Our partnerships with other federal agencies, we clarify policy. We work with states and local governments. We have an organization called the State Broadband Leaders Network, where we have a multi-stakeholder group of a number of state broadband offices, and they get together to talk about best practices, grant programs, and really advancing working with private providers within the state. With respect to technical assistance, which we're doing today, is really how we work with and advise communities and regional teams, right? We hold in-person and now virtual broadband workshops and events, really around the areas of infrastructure, digital inclusion, and smart technology utilization. And then from our website and other guidance that we post, we have guidance and tools that are on our website. We share best practices. Again, we have monthly webinars that we host under the Broadband USA platform. And then we just really seek to have open dialogue with practitioners across the country, with providers, with communities and community leaders to really advance the conversation around what communities need for broadband infrastructure and digital inclusion programming. And so again, we really focus on three main areas in our technical assistance program: planning, funding, and implementation. The vast majority of our community engagements are at the front end, just where you in this community is right now. How do we get started? How do we plan? How do we work with our stakeholders? How do we work with our service providers? How do we even identify who they are, right? You don't have to figure this out. We can help you along the way. And I'm gonna outline kind of what we have planned to generate excitement and inclusion in what we're doing. So our first plan
11/17/58.
really to focus on getting started, right? As a community, what steps do I need to undertake? How do I move from a vision to a goal? How do I start working with stakeholders and service providers in my community? And so we're going to start with the Broadband 101 overview. And we're going to talk about broadband definitions, baseline speed. So we understand the base technology that we're talking about and understand the common language and parlance in the broadband and digital inclusion area. So now I'm going to ask my colleague, Don Williams, to join. He's going to facilitate that next session around the planning roadmap and the 6 steps on broadband planning. Don, could you please join and give everyone an overview of our planning roadmap session?
You're muted, Don.
On mute.
There we go.
There we go.
Thanks. Well, appreciate being part of this opportunity here to help folks in the Delta region. And I'll second what Scott said. It's really been a pleasure working with the Delta Broadband Group, and we're looking forward to a number of pretty exciting sessions. Broadband planning, to me, is pretty fundamental at this point and has been for economic development throughout America. In rural America, if you do not have good broadband connectivity, economic development is very difficult. And what we want to do in this first workshop session, number 1, is to look at some of the definitions of broadband in terms of their speed, want to talk about different kinds of broadband possibilities in terms of technology. We want to talk about the importance of speed and scalability in networks. We also want to talk about network architecture. There's a variety of different ways that broadband can be brought to the Delta. So we want to talk about last mile, we want to talk about middle mile, we want to talk about different fundamental network architectures to familiarize everybody with some of the options you may have going forward. We also want to stress that there is a number of technologies that can produce good broadband results. And those include, of course, fiber optic connectivity. They may also be a hybrid system of coax and fiber. There also may be types of wireless systems, particularly fixed wireless. We also want to talk about the possibility of hotspots. The benefits of broadband are huge. They affect workforce development. They affect the homework gap, and that is where a child has connectivity at the school, but when they get home to do homework, there is no connectivity at the home. We want to talk about some of the solutions that communities have used for that. And importantly, particularly during the COVID-19 crisis, we want to talk about telehealth. We work a lot with communities throughout America on telehealth projects. Some of those are local communities. Some of those are FEMA groups, FEMA regions. So we want to talk about that. The way to begin is planning. We have a number of toolkits we're going to available online, but we also want to talk about the actual roadmap for planning. We've got a number of different steps for that. Basically, you've got 6 steps or so. We want to go through each one of those, assembling a team, assessing your local resources. That's going to also include asset inventories. What currently is available in the area, and then what do you have that can possibly defray some of the costs of broadband deployment, whether that deployment is from a nonprofit, a current provider, an ISP, a WISP. You want to talk about some of the applications that you can do for broadband projects and planning. We also want to mention and go forward with community priorities. You know, I work with many communities across the country, and I have for a number of decades. One of the things I've always understood is every community is quite different. You may have a lot of similar problems in terms of broadband infrastructure or other infrastructure, but the solutions and the planning and the timing and the funding, those are all different depending on the community itself. So we're hopeful to learn a great deal from you folks about what your community's priorities are. Part of that is going to be developing stakeholder engagement for the leadership team. And we can talk about different kinds of stakeholders, what they may be interested in, and that's going to be different institutions, whether it's public safety, the libraries, the schools, local or parish governments. And finally, and I think we have a number of folks online today that are leaders and champions of broadband. One of the other things I've noticed throughout time is that when you go into a community that is wanting to expand broadband, bring broadband where it isn't currently, make it better, higher speeds, lower latency, they need champions and leaderships. Without a champion or a leader, it's very hard to drive the broadband program forward. So we want to talk about some examples of champions and leadership, and I think we're going to have a pretty righteous Broadband 101 workshop in the first session. I really hope everybody can attend that, as well as the other sessions, which we're going to talk about in a moment. Scott, do you want to talk about some of the exercises we might be doing?
I will. Thank you, Don. Appreciate that. And at the end of this, we're going to engage in our first 2 thought exercises, and we'll get to that in a bit. But right now, I'm going to preview some of the other workshop sessions and then introduce our next series of speakers. So we're going to follow that up with another workshop session on federal resources and local support for broadband in East Carroll Parish. and the Delta region. And so we're planning to have representatives from the Delta Regional Authority, some federal partners that you'll hear from today, but we'll give more details on their resources and funding programs from the USDA and the Economic Development Administration. We may have local service, broadband service providers that will be also on the panel. We're working on having representatives maybe from local electric co-ops, philanthropic sources, and possible a local bank or funder that would be interested. And then our elevator pitch exercise for workshop number 2 is exactly that. What is your elevator pitch? So if you had to pitch East Carroll Parish to an investor, to a service provider, we're going to help you develop that 30-second pitch that you would pitch the benefits of why expansion to East Carroll Parish would be beneficial. Then we're going to go to workshop number 3, and another member of my team, Amy Sung, is going to facilitate this session on broadband adoption and use. And it's the secret to sustainable broadband networks, right? It's really an overview of digital inclusion and adoption, why inclusion matters for your vulnerable populations and various underrepresented groups. We talk about resources and partners, the various broadband subsidies and discount programs, the computing devices, technical support, digital skills training, which is very important for all users. And then we're going to do an overview of the Purdue University study that looked at economic development in rural communities. They just wrapped it up, just released it. And there's some really startling numbers on the impact of broadband on local rural economies. And so we'll talk about that as well. And then we'll have some exercises that you can do to identify the underserved segments in East Carroll Parish, and then what partners can help reach those populations, and where can those activities be incorporated into existing programs. And then finally, our final workshop session, will be led by Karen Perry, is using data as a foundation for your plan. So whether you're doing a strategic plan, a local and economic development plan, tying your plan into whatever the state of Louisiana has going, it's a very numerous data sources, publicly available data sources that really help tell your story. And so we're going to preview those, and you will be able to access your own data and consider those implications and options for partnership as you move forward. So as you see, we have a really focused 4 sessions for you. We hope you will be able to join us. They're going to be interactive. You don't have to know everything. You come, you learn, you ask questions, and we'll be available to answer and ask any questions that you may have, as well as our federal partners and local partners that we'll be working with. So now it's my pleasure, as we moved into the next item on the agenda, we're going to have an overview of local and regional federal partners. And today you're going to hear from your federal partners, Arpuva Naik and Jason Wilson from the U.S. Economic Development Administration out of the Austin, Texas Regional Office. That office includes Louisiana. And then we're really honored to have William Volt, who's the General Field Representative for USDA for the Rural Utilities Service. He also covers Louisiana and resides in Louisiana. And he's going to cover USDA and his work with not only service providers, but communities throughout the rural Southeast and rural Louisiana. And then in our federal session that's coming up, our partnership session on session 2, we'll have Leslie Durham, who's the governor's designee for the Delta Regional Authority, and Tracy Osbury, who's the director of regional development for the North Delta Regional Planning and Development District. They'll be joining that panel in session number 2 to talk about the resources from a regional perspective in the Delta region that your community will be a part of. So thank you very much for joining us today. We look forward for exciting sessions coming up, and again, hope that you will be able to participate and join us throughout the sessions. And so with that, I will turn it over. I'll stop sharing my screen, and I'll ask Arpuva Naik and Jason Wilson from the U.S. Economic Development Administration to join us. So thank you.
Hi, good morning, and thanks for having me. Jason Wilson is not able to join us today, but I would be happy to talk a little bit about the Economic Development Administration under the umbrella of the U.S. Department of Commerce, and some of the funding opportunities that we have. So as we've kind of discussed with this work group before, and we're continuing in discussions, the EDA was allocated about $254 million as part of the CARES Act in helping America's communities to recover from the COVID pandemic. The entire EDA was allocated about $1.5 billion. The Austin Regional Office, which covers a 5-state region of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and New Mexico, was allocated about $254 million. And so in addition to our regular programs, which fund infrastructure and recovery efforts such as broadband expansion, the CARES Act funding has less requirements. So it's not as competitive. The idea being that we want to get this money out to the communities who need it the most, especially underserved communities. And so with that in mind, we have been granting a lot more of these funds than I think, some of the requirements that are attached to our ordinary funding. For instance, 100% match, in that the local community matches 100% of the funds that the EDA provides. Right now with the CARES Act funding, those are down to an 80%, 20% match. So the local community, matches about 20%. So with that being said, the CARES Act funding is a lot less competitive because we want to get it out to the communities that need it. But we have gone through it quite fast. Communities have been applying for these funds a lot, and we've already, I think, allocated about roughly $100 million of our allocation. So we're almost at the halfway point already. So I don't say that to make you think that we need to really rush this process, because we can certainly, if the CARES Act funding, is fully allocated, which we expect it somewhere next year to late next year, we will still certainly be able to put in an application under normal EDA funding. We'll just have, some more work to do, but in terms of making sure that it's a very competitive grant and everything. But your partners with the North Delta Planning Development Commission are going to be very extremely important in that process and helping that. And I'm sure that they can discuss a little bit more about that as they've had experience in submitting those applications. But I don't want to spend too much time other than just saying that we're here to help and here to support throughout the process. Jason Wilson, my colleague, covers the state of Louisiana as the economic development representative for the state of Louisiana. So he'll also be here to help and support, and as well as myself, I'm here to support in any capacity. But we look forward to helping. We just through this process of working with you all, have, heard a lot about the need for the area and understand the severity of the situation. And so we certainly are here to offer our help and support. So I appreciate you having me here today, and we'll continue to help in the effort.
Thank you very much, Apu. Next, we'll have William Vogt from the USDA.
Good morning. I'm Bill Vogt. I'm with USDA Rural Development, Rural Utilities Service Telecommunications Program. I live in Ball, Louisiana, which is just out from Alexandria, Louisiana, and I've been working Louisiana and Arkansas for, well, a number of years. In fact, I go back in the program 48 years. I've been working doing basically the same thing. So I've been working longer than maybe some of you have been alive. What we've been doing is rural telecommunications. The agency goes back, it used to be called the Rural Electrification Administrator, REA. And since 1934, electric co-ops, since 1949, funding telephone companies. Those areas that we served with that are always rural areas, but just because you're not served by one of those companies in your area doesn't preclude you from any of our programs. I see in a number of the screens that are up, people are working from home. I want you to know that we may be the original work at home. I've been working at home since 1973. I'm a staff of one. I work out of my home in Ball, Louisiana, and I travel Louisiana and Arkansas. So I'm familiar with work at home. I'm familiar with connecting with people in rural areas. I want to start out by telling you a little bit about this 48 years. I go back to a time when telephone service and electric service were not granted, taken for granted in rural areas. And so the REA went into those areas with electric service and, in my part of the program, telephone service. And I worked on some of those areas where there was either no telephone service in existence or it was the old magneto telephone system that was there. And as we built those systems, we built multi-party systems. But there was a division. If you didn't have that service, there was a division in your area between what you didn't have and others that did have it. Then we built multi-party services because that's what could be afforded in rural areas. There was, again, a divide between rural areas and some urban areas. If you had a multi-party telephone, and perhaps some of you go back to those days, I go back to those days. If you had a multi-telephone service, multi-party, you didn't do banking on your telephone. You didn't call your doctor on the telephone. You may not have even had conversations with family because there were other people listening. There was a divide between those services and the maybe one-party urban areas. So we built one-party systems, and as soon as we got one-party systems built, digital services came into play. And if you had a digital service on your telephone, oh, you could do some online banking, you could do some online services as well. And hence the term, the digital divide. Rural areas that didn't have those services couldn't participate in those things. And so we built digital systems. Well, where I'm coming to is now, yes, we've got another divide as we talk about high-speed internet service. There's a divide between those areas which have high-speed service and those areas that don't. And that's where my funding comes into play. We funded all of those things historically, and we continue to fund those programs even today in rural areas. So I'd like to explain a couple of 4 or 5 programs we've got. You don't have to take notes or remember any of them because I'll be back with some slides on the 21st of October, and we'll go through the detail of each one of these programs. But just as an overview of what we're doing currently in rural areas. We have loan programs for rural independent telephone companies, rural electric cooperatives. And those programs are building systems today. They're building fiber to the home systems. We have those fiber to the home systems operating and constructing not all that far from where all of you are. And we've completed some of those systems. You'll think, oh no, they've completed systems and we don't have those systems. But where we completed one of those systems a while back, it's in Arkansas. And I took some of the USDA leadership from Little Rock out to that very rural area. It's full of chicken farms. And before we left Little Rock, I had them do something called a speed test on their computer. And they did a speed test, and there's a gauge that comes up, and it was a certain speed that they had in Little Rock. We drove 100 miles away to an area that's been built fiber to the home. And the first thing I had them do when we got there was to do a speed test again, using the same computer, the same software. And when they did the speed test, it knocked the speed test needle off the scale. Wow, that is something. When you've got fiber to the home, you've got something. When you've got high-speed internet, you've got something. And so that's something to look forward to. In the telephone infrastructure program, right now we have $660 million available for rural telephone companies, which are not in your area. So I'm not going to talk much more about that. But for other areas, we have other programs. And that's the news that you all want to be interested in. We have programs, loans, and grants to serve rural areas with high-speed broadband service. The first stopping point that I want to make is with a program that's under the Farm Bill. We have a loan program under the Farm Bill, about $100 million right now. We have more money in the upcoming appropriations in the fiscal year that starts tomorrow. Right now, that program's not accepting applications. That program probably won't be around to accept applications till after the first of the calendar year. But it is available for areas that don't have service to a certain percentage of the households at certain speeds, and those will be in the guides that come up in that time, and we'll have more information on that. The program, again, around $100 million available. We have a system that's building in Southwest Arkansas, 5-county area they're building, and why I focus on that right now is that's an unusual model, because the company that's the applicant is a brand new company. It was formed as an LLC, but the two owners of the LLC, one is an electric co-op in the area, the other is a rural independent telephone company in the area. They see the need for economic development, and they obtained a $20 million loan to build out a 5-county area. They're doing that as we speak. They're about halfway done with it. They're offering speeds of up to 10 gig service to, and they're selling the thunder out of the thing. So they're building it. So here's a model of something that didn't seem to apply, but it did when we got to looking at a new company and a new company that could be the applicant. So that's under the Farm Bill. It's the Rural Broadband Loan and Loan Guarantee Program is what it's named. Another program that's around is called the Reconnect Program. And the Reconnect Program has gone through Reconnect Part 1 and Part 2, and we're looking forward to Reconnect Part 3. Parts 1 and 2 each had around $600 million nationwide in 3 products or 3 components of the program. A grant-only component, a 50% grant, 50% loan, and a 2% fixed rate loan program, $200 million in each of the 3 components. I don't know what would be in the 3rd phase of broadband under Reconnect, but I'm under the impression that that program will be available perhaps in the next quarter of the calendar year. And we should have Reconnect 3 announced around that time. We have several awards. We have one award that was made in the Reconnect Round 1, Star Telephone Company, that's just west of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, received an award under Reconnect Round 1 to serve an area of their service area that has no service, and an area outside of their service area that has no service. So they were an awardee there. The Round 2 awards have not been announced yet. And again, Round 3 is upcoming. So that's called Reconnect. And that's a possibility as well for your area. There's another program, and it's under the Farm Bill, and it's a very small program, but it's a grant program. And it's called Community Connect Grants. And that program is for an area, a specific geographic area, where there's no service by any providers at a speed of 10 meg down, 1 meg up. And so it has to be one geographic area. An application can be up to $3 million in that program. And What's considered existing service is existing terrestrial service by a telephone company, by a cable company, by a fixed wireless company, but not satellite services or cellular services. The good news in that program is that the application window for that program opened up last Friday for a 90-day application period. The money from the current fiscal year, which ends today, plus the next fiscal year starts tomorrow, totals around $70 million, and that's available under the program. So we have a current application window in that program that's exciting because it's happening right now. And that program also could apply in your area. So I've mentioned 3 programs that could apply in your area. The Farm Bill Broadband program of loan and loan guarantees, the Reconnect program, and the Community Connect program. We'll have much more details of that in the session 2 on October 21st. And what we're looking at is, well, who could be an applicant in that program? And then how can that application be put together? Before I finish, I do need to mention one additional program. Doesn't deal directly with broadband, but it deals indirectly with broadband. It's called Distance Learning Telemedicine Grants, or DLT grant program. We have around $74 million this past fiscal year, plus another $25 million. So we've got $100 million in the past rounds. This program comes up once a year. It's a grant program with a 15% match. Normally the applicants are schools, hospitals, and the like, and it's for equipment at the end of infrastructure, and it doesn't require necessarily that a broadband program has been initiated, because perhaps the school has its own broadband under the E-rate, perhaps the hospital does as well. And so there's grants for facilities for hospitals and for schools to connect schools together for distance learning, hospitals together for telemedicine. That's an exciting program. The current application rounds are closed, but it happens about each year. The hospital in Lake Providence was an awardee a number of years ago. The teleradiology system they're operating is under that grant award. But it's exciting to connect schools together, to connect medical facilities together. And so I want to mention that program. I have more details of that program on the 21st as well. And so in conclusion, again, my name is William Vogt, william.vogt, V-O-G-T, @usda.gov. You can find all the information that I've talked about at our website. And our website is simply rd.usda.gov, rd.usda.gov, G-O-V. Click on telecommunications programs under the programs and services tab, and you'll get to all the information on all of these programs. So thank you, Scott. I've gone over a little bit the 5 minutes, but I got an email earlier that said I did have a little bit more than 5 minutes. If you talk to Karen Perry, and I know she's on the call, Karen will tell you it's a dangerous thing to tell Bill he's got slightly more than 5 minutes. But we're, I think, right on schedule to go on with the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
We appreciate it. Laura, I'll kick it back over to you and Broderick from Together Louisiana.
Yeah, so exciting. I'm listening. It feels like it's raining money. I know that's not true. We got a lot of work to do, but I mean, the possibilities are just, it's like a smorgasbord. So, and I so appreciate you guys investing your time and your expertise, and looking forward to working with you. So I think, Scott, you were going to tell us a little bit about these thought exercises that we're going to be doing. You had a slide for that. Maybe you could just give us a little short 3-minute little explanation of the thought exercises that we'll be doing. I think
yes,
we have that as part of the first
real
session.
quick, and I'll be brief. So I do, while I share my screen, I do want to say that the Together Louisiana, the Delta Interfaith Group, have been really a pleasure to work with. They are fired up about bringing broadband connectivity and programming to East Carroll Parish, Lake Providence, and the Delta region. So we're going to have a lot of fun working with you. This is what Don and I do, and we enjoy it. So I'm going to take real briefly, this is in preparation for our next session. It's just a thought exercise, right? Delta Interfaith has done a lot of initial groundwork and pulling all you folks together and really thinking about how they want to proceed and move forward. And so in preparation of our next session, these are just a couple of thought exercises that I want to leave you with and you think about in preparation for our next session. And then we can provide these for you by PDF, by email after the conclusion of today. But for right now, these are just thought exercises, right? So I'm going to talk about first identifying your broadband community priorities. So as you think about broadband and the application that it has to your community, right? Agriculture, business, economic development, telemedicine, telehealth, schools, you name it, right? What are the top 3 benefits that improved broadband access and utilization will provide for your community? So just think about that and then be prepared to answer that question. And then once you do that, is there an order of priority for working on those items? And you would jot those down. Again, no right, no wrong answers. Just again, have you brainstorm and think. And then our second exercise, again, to think about is stakeholder outreach. And so we have a nice, vast care of people on this webinar today. But as you think about who could benefit or who should be on the next session, this worksheet will help you conduct that stakeholder outreach. So again, if they're already involved, check them off. If you would like to involve them, you identify who that person would be, and then you could assign somebody to contact them in a due date. And you want to invite them to our next session. So again, these are just an overview of some of your stakeholders in the community that would benefit from this workshop, that will benefit from the groundwork that Delta Interfaith has started along with Together Louisiana and their federal partners and state and local partners that we've identified. So again, just a brief thought exercise. We'll email these PDFs to help you, but please come prepared next session because we're going to have an interactive session and get your feedback on these 2 exercises. Okay, so thank you very much. That's a preview. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Laura, I will turn it back over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I know we've been listening to a lot of information here, and I was wondering if I would like to ask a few people how they thought as they heard some of this information. What does it sound like? Sheriff Williams, what do you think about what you've heard so far, if you don't mind sharing? I think he may be muted. I hope he's still there. Well, okay. I know our superintendent of schools is on. Megan, do you have any thoughts about what you've heard so far?
I'm just excited to hear about opportunities that may be out there to help the school system because as you all know, this has been a challenging year for us. We have embarked upon offering virtual learning to our students, and we want to ensure equality and equity for all of our students. And it has been challenging, even though within the school system itself, we have sufficient broadband services that our technology director, who's also on the call, has been working with E-Rate to ensure that we have sufficient connectivity and internet access. But in the bigger picture, the bigger issues or challenges that we faced were students within the community and those households not having sufficient access to internet or broadband services. Now, we did try to alleviate some of those issues by providing hotspots, but that did not stop us from running into several technical issues at the start. Things have sort of tapered off some. It's tremendously better for us now, but it did not come without some huge undertaking and working through a lot of issues initially. So the prospect of improving broadband here within our community, which would help our community, and then specifically for us as a school district, our families and our students, I'm looking forward to seeing what becomes of this.
Thank you. Let's see, Mr. Cox with Delta Community College. What about you? I know this, you've got connectivity, but what are your reactions for the possibility of the community in East Carroll Parish, where there's a campus here that could be utilized more?
Well, I think it's great. You know, during all the COVID, we all learned that it doesn't matter if you have high speed at your campus, if the campus is closed and you have online classes that they don't have access with broadband, you know, they can't do it. So this is very, very important. We offer a lot of online courses and you know, everybody really needs high speed internet access now to be able to function in this world. So, it's just essential that we do this because right now, you know, with all the online courses and of course we're open now and we have, you know, high speed where people can come up and use our Wi-Fi or come on campus, but still we serve a lot of population that are out in rural areas that don't have transportation. So this is wonderful stuff.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I see someone from the hospital here. I think it's Ms. Stutz. Are you able to maybe share some reactions that you have to hearing some of this?
Yes, this is Melinda. I agree with Mr. Cox and Ms. Brown both. Like with the patients here at the hospital, we have connection here. We have fiber here at the hospital. However, the patients have problems. The government requires us to have connections with these patients, and the patients have problems getting back and actually seeing their charts and stuff that the government's requiring us to show them. So like with the students and with the students at the Delta, the patients here at the hospital have the difficulty, and broadband would be a lifesaver for that.
Wonderful. Thank y'all for sharing that. Yes, it's I think we all know the issues, so we're ready to get to work. So Broderick, you've created, we want to sort of take on this excitement and go forward. I know that there's a lot of technical stuff that we've been talking about, but it is possible you don't need to know, I think Scott mentioned it at some point, you don't need to know everything to attend all of this. There's lots of questions. You probably already have some questions that we can bring up as we go through the sessions, but Broderick, maybe you could tell us how to go ahead and sign up for these sessions as we move forward.
Sure. So we've got 4 dates starting next week, October the 7th, and then every 2 weeks at this time. And I think we've got them from 10, and then I think we're planning for, you know, hour and 15 minutes for each of those. I'm going to put in the chat right now the link to register over Zoom for these 4 sessions, and you can register for all of those that you can attend. But you know, in some tradition, this is the part of the event that we might call an altar call. Okay, in the sense that the purpose of this is not to inform you about some process that a bunch of other people are going to do. It's to invite you to be the ones to do the process, right? That is what we understand from the Broadband USA folks, and I think that is also the ethos of Delta Interfaith and Together Louisiana is there's no group of magical elves out there that does the work, it's us, right? So in that link, that is an invitation for you to say, yes, I'm gonna put these in my calendar, and I'm gonna be thinking about who else ought to be a part of these sessions, who's got, you know, smarts and ideas and resources, and most of all, an interest in helping to transform broadband in this area. Any questions just about how to register? Did that link come through okay? In the chat?
Yes,
Okay.
I can see it.
Great. And then, Ms. Arvin, could I just share one other reflection?
Please.
I'm from New Orleans. I'm in New Orleans now. I had never been to East Carroll or Lake Providence until I started working up there. And you know what the first thing that struck me is that I couldn't get a text message. You know what the second thing that struck me? It's a beautiful place. More and more, it's not going to matter where you are that much. Whether you are in Silicon Valley or New York or New Orleans or Ball, Louisiana, it's going to matter what kind of internet access you have. And places that are beautiful places are going to be just as able to be a place from which people work as places that are hubs of businesses and population centers, right? I mean, this stuff is changing. And this community, which has been on an economic decline because of big structural changes happening at a level that has nothing to do with the willingness and interest of the people locally, could be on the beneficiary side of that, a different round of big structural changes if you get the internet situation sorted out. You know what I mean? So it strikes me that this is not just a kind of good service thing, but this could be vital to the economic future of the region in a way that could help to set a model for other places across Louisiana. And there's some people on this call who represent those other places across Louisiana, and they are watching what you are doing with interest so that they can hope to do some of that themselves. So with that, Laura, I'll put it back in your hands. We do like to start and end on time. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Broderick. That's a wonderful testimony. I'm not sure any of our pastors on the call could have done any better on that altar call. But we do appreciate all of you being here today and hope you go to that link. We will put that link. We'll email it out to people. If you think of somebody already, you get off this call and it sounds so exciting, you want to let people know now. Email me and I'll put my email in the chat as well. But you already have it probably since you got all of this stuff from me anyway, or the person who signed you up for this. So we'll get started and